Welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show, where we explore the fascinating world of real estate investing with your host, Patrick Switek. Patrick is a dynamic young entrepreneur and an accomplished real estate investor who's passionate about helping others achieve financial freedom. Each week, we sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals in the real estate industry and delve into their personal journeys, lessons learned, and secrets to their success. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Zach, welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show. I am super excited to have you here. Zach is very connected in this space. Not only did he have his own startup that got acquired recently in this space, but also the idea that Zach is an influencer. He talks to a lot of people in the space. He knows everybody. The last conference I was at, he was pretty much connecting with everybody. He had even a little event going on and so many people showed up. I was like, who is this popular guy? But Zach and I connected on LinkedIn. I'm super excited to have him here because he's going to talk about loyalty, all things loyalty. Right now, he works at a company called Journey, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about that. But all in all, what is loyalty? Just like in the hotel space, in the hospitality, there's loyalty always happening with the Hilton points or different aspects of retaining customers and getting them to come back to the same hotels. And how does that translate into the short-term rental space? Can we utilize that same criteria as we go through that? So without further ado, Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It is an absolute honor to be here. I got to have you on my pod. We recorded a pod live at the IMN event that I think you were referencing in Miami a couple weeks ago. So it's nice to be sitting in a different seat. And I'm excited for this conversation. I'm a big fan of you and the co-host company and all the incredible work that you do. So just an honor to chat with you.
Appreciate you. So I think the best way to get started really was, what's your background? How did Zach get into this space? What was Zach doing before that?
Oh gosh, that's a really long story, but the super shorter story, the short version of that story, right? I'm an entrepreneur by trade. I spent actually my first decade actually working in growth marketing at an agency, but at that agency we were highly entrepreneurial. We were constantly building out new products, new services, actually mostly focused on the higher education space. So I built my first company is like a sub-agency or sub-brand of the agency. It was called Enrollify, and we basically became the go-to place for podcasts that were higher ed related, learning and development resources for people that were working in higher education marketing. So think about folks that were recruit college and university students. So Patrick, like when you were finishing off high school, you started getting all those letters in the mail, people coming to visit your school and tell you about their colleges and whatnot. We would partner with those people to basically help them find like the right students to target and enroll you in cool marketing campaigns to convince you to go to University X or University Y. Anyways, we built a content brand in the space, grew it to be the largest podcast network in the higher ed ecosystem, and were able to sell that to a CRM company in higher ed. And it was the classic software company buys audience play. I was always obsessed with the Morning Brews of the world and the Hustles of the world. And when Sam Parr from the Hustle sold to HubSpot, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I just do that, but at a significantly smaller level in a very specific niche? And so we were fortunate enough to be able to do that with Enrollify. But really my journey in like hospitality started during COVID. My wife and I were living in DC. We broke our lease. We spent 18 months Airbnb hopping, where we literally just stayed at Airbnbs. We'd book a space for 4 days, and then we'd get there and then plan our next space. And like many people, we were doing the whole digital nomad thing, and it was awesome. And really, that's when I first realized, oh, hey, like the Airbnb that I stayed at in 2016 when my buddies and I went to Europe, that was like cheap and grimy, right? That is not what like Airbnbs are today, right? And we were staying at these incredible like farm stays and these bespoke cabins, and we never made it out to Joshua Tree, Patrick. But if we did, we would have definitely been staying at a co-host company. So we were staying at these like incredible properties, right? And then realized, if we could be flexible with where we went and how long we stayed, we could score these really incredible deals. Granted, this was in late 2020 where hosts were just excited to get like any bookings, and so it was a little bit easier than maybe it is now. But really thought, hey, I think there's an opportunity to build like the Scott's Cheap Flights, but for Airbnbs. For those who aren't familiar, Scott's Cheap Flights newsletter sends you like flight alerts on cool flights. We thought we could do that same thing for Airbnb, so we built a little newsletter. Sam Parr, actually from the Hustle, ended up finding it and sharing it, and that was like a big moment for us. And long story short, that company was called Spontaneous at the time. Spontaneous was a little bit tough to say, so we wound up rebranding it to Stay Watch, and essentially Stay Watch is where consumers would come. They'd tell us where they wanted to go, what they wanted to spend, and then we would scrape Airbnb, Booking, and Vrbo every day and then bring them an email with the best deals that matched their search criteria. And then along the way, in order to help market Stay Watch and acquire host partners, I started this podcast called Behind the Stays, and I would interview folks who were building really cool experiential short-term rentals, landscape resorts, boutique hotels. And then in August of this past year, September really of this past year, Journey's CEO came calling and said, really like what you're doing. I want you and your team to come build Journey with me. I said I had never heard of Journey. What's Journey? But one thing led to another, and yeah, they acquired us in September. So that's, believe it or not, the short version of the story, folks, even though it felt a little bit longer than maybe you thought you were signing up for.
Damn, I was like sipping my coffee here. It was already, dang, the coffee's already cold. No, I'm kidding. No, that was good. That was pretty short. You could definitely make it a lot longer. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think what's really interesting about that is obviously with Stay Watch, what was the vertical that, if you can share, that Journey wanted to acquire Stay Watch? What was the reasoning for that?
I think there were two things. One was the Behind the Stays podcast, like the media component of it was interesting just because, as Patrick, when you start a podcast, like I always tell my friends, the best way to build like relationships with smart people is to start a podcast, because your average individual who's smart and successful, even if they think, wow, Patrick, you're cool, you have cool hair, you're great, they're not going to spend the time, they're not going to have like an hour-long coffee with you or an hour-long happy hour with you because they're busy, right? But if you invite that same person to come have that same conversation that you want to have with them, but on a podcast, they'll say yes, right? And so it's this,
exactly
it's this
what
funny.
I did to get Zach on this podcast. I was like, this guy wouldn't take $1,000 to spend time with me. So I was like, shit, I got to get him on the podcast. I don't know what else to do.
I don't know what that says about all of our egos, dude, but there is something true. There's something like very true about that, right? So I think they were interested in like the network that I had been able to, that I was fortunate enough to curate through the podcast, but then also the fact that we had built some cool tech at Stay Watch, which allowed like consumers to basically opt in to get notified. A lot of the partners that we had were some of the most popular Airbnbs in the world, right? They've got hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. They don't have a lot of availability or inventory. We built a smart waitlist tool where you could say, hey, if this property ever becomes available for a weekend in October, or if this property ever becomes available between this price point and this price point, I want to be the first to be notified, right? So we built out all that functionality.
Airbnb? Did you do that by scraping Airbnb? Wow.
Tons of scraping, Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. And we built like a very sophisticated scraping tool where basically like we could know in real time if there were any changes to an Airbnb calendar, if there was any price drops, and we could notify travelers of those price drops. So we're building it, long story short, like Stay Watch and its brand will eventually be sunsetted, but we're taking a lot of that tech and we're building that into the Journey platform.
Cool. That's fun. So great. So obviously they wanted to inherit your team. They wanted to inherit Zach. What's Zach doing now for Journey? What's your role?
So my official title is head of the Journey Alliance, which basically, to me, it means I'm in charge of the supply side of things, right? Getting the right partners to join Journey. And what we're building at Journey is, I should probably just state that now, is an alliance of the top independent operators, the top independent hospitality brands. So think top independent boutique hotels, think about short-term rental companies that have built like really incredible supply, like what you guys have built, Patrick, at the co-host company. So top operators who have independent brands who aren't already a part of a kind of a larger collection. So you won't find like a Marriott hotel or even like an Autograph Collection by Marriott hotel on Journey. You won't find a Vacasa, right, a brand on Journey. You'll find very bespoke, curated properties of the top independent operators in the world. So we're starting with the US. We launched the consumer in March, and then we'll very quickly span. We've already signed on partners internationally, but those properties won't be available until later this year. And really the reason for Journey, like why does Journey exist? What's the opportunity that we see? Really comes down to two things. One, we believe that the next generation of travelers really do want to support independent brands, right? They care about the more bespoke experiences. You're seeing this like massive shift, in fact, from like business travelers actually choosing to spend and stay at more boutique properties and forgoing like their status at Marriott or their status at Hilton because they're like, I've stayed at 10,000 courtyards. I don't need another courtyard experience. They're the same. I want the cool new hip place to stay in town, right? And if I'm going to travel all the time, I want to stay somewhere that's awesome and that has a coal bar, right? And that's got a good gym. And so we believe that we can build a collection of those properties. And then we also believe that if consumers could earn points and earn valuable rewards at the best properties, they'd give up their statuses at Marriott, at Hilton, and or their statuses wouldn't hold as much weight. The problem is they end up staying in these ecosystems because they've built up all these values of points and perks. But if you can offer points and if you can offer meaningful perks and if you can offer meaningful status, why wouldn't the consumer want to just choose the best property in the market? And we believe that they will if we can offer those things. So that's what Journey's trying to solve for.
Amazing. So I'm going to challenge you. So,
love it.
so you said business, obviously like the airline industry does something very similar. I had the founder of Price Labs on here as well. And he
Nice.
mentioned, he was talking about how really their pricing caters towards business travelers. Like how do we get as many business travelers in, and then vacation and everybody else falls into place.
Yeah.
Like obviously you're alluding to that same idea of business travelers really going towards business travelers because they need that reoccurring, they're the recurring use case for these areas. Now, curious, why do you partner up with boutique operators in vacation rental areas if they're not as prone to that kind of stuff? Like, what's really the percentage of people that are avid vacationers, not just people that go like once or twice a year?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things behind your question. Number one, we believe that a traveler is a traveler, right? Now, the purpose of your trip will always be different. When you're traveling with your partner, or if you've got kids, you're traveling with your kids, that's going to be an inherently different trip than if you're going with a buddy, if you're going on a golf trip, which is also going to be an inherently different trip than if you're traveling for work by yourself, right? So this idea that vacation rentals and hotels are like competitors, we really just don't even buy into that argument. I think for years the hotel industry tried to convince Airbnb and others that the Airbnbs of the world, the short-term rentals of the world were hurting hospitality. I think what the data has shown, and over the last several years, they're just different. They're different stay assets for different types of trips. So we don't really believe that they're at odds with each other. That's premise number one. Premise number two here is that we believe that if it were true, there was no use case for building an ecosystem that rewarded business travelers. If there was no overlap between business and leisure travelers, then you wouldn't see the biggest brands in the world trying to get into the leisure market space. So you see the Marriotts of the world with homes and villas trying to get into the luxury STR space, the luxury vacation rental space, specifically because they know that folks earn a bunch of points when they travel for work, but they want to redeem those points when they're traveling with their family or their partners. So I think the two types of travelers, quite frankly, are inseparable, and it's really just making sure that you have enough interesting inventory to meet the needs of the traveler, regardless of where their trip is. But to your point about earning points, right? There have been other programs in specifically the vacation rental space that have launched and tried to do something similar. They've tried to build a loyalty play. The reason I think that they've failed is because the loyalty play has really just revolved around you earn points when you stay for nights at these vacation rentals, and you have to travel a lot, right? You have to stay in a lot of vacation rentals to earn enough points to be able to redeem a free night. So we believe that the solve there isn't, hey, how do you get people to stay at vacation rentals more, to earn more nights so that they can earn more rewards? The solve is like, how do you get them to earn points in other ways so that they can more quickly redeem those points at vacation rentals? We'll be launching a co-branded consumer credit card, for instance, right? So in the same way that you have your United card, you have your Chase Sapphire card, you'll be able to have a Journey card, which will allow you to earn points on everyday purchases that you can then go quickly redeem for a stay at the co-host company, for instance. So the programs that have been built thus far, they've all failed to build a strong consumer-facing brand, and they've all failed to be able to deliver points or valuable rewards to the consumer in ways other than nights stayed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned like there's a lot of different forms of travelers. Now, I'm curious, like, let's say, for example, an area like the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people actually go to the Smoky Mountains to travel for business? A lot? A little bit?
I would imagine a few, right?
Probably a few, right?
Yeah.
But not like a lot like a Scottsdale where you can have more flexibility, right? But the idea behind this whole thing is these points, if you're a leisure traveler or a business traveler, let's say you travel for business and use Journey to go to Scottsdale, but then eventually you're like, I want to go to the Smoky Mountains separate on a family vacation. I'm just going to use my points. That's what you're alluding to. So in this case, is the goal for Journey to work with vacation rental or short-term rental operators in cities? Is that more critical to gain the points of the business travelers and then maybe secondary the vacation rental markets? Or is there no difference in your mind?
We don't really see a difference. And to be super clear, like our go-to-market strategy is not go after the business traveler. That's not something that we're intentionally doing. I was like just musing on the fact that we are seeing, like globally, you're seeing sort of this shift of business travelers, which is obviously like an important consumer segment. You are seeing them choose more boutique experiences than staying with the big brands. That was really just a point I was making. At Journey, we're not necessarily going after the business traveler. And in fact, we're probably at launch going after more like the leisure traveler and or like the work from anywhere traveler, given sort of the supply that we're curating for. So Journey is highly curated, right? We're looking for like the best properties in the world, the most unique properties in the world. And given the location of some of these properties, I'll give you a couple examples. Onera, Ben Wolf's brand, they're an early alliance partner. They're in the Texas Hill Country. Most of the people that are going to Onera are not necessarily going there for work, right? They're a couple hours outside of Austin. Or actually, Onera Wimberley is 45 minutes outside of Austin. So maybe those folks would be traveling for work, but unlikely, right? Now, they might be going on a work offsite there, right? Because Onera is like this perfect place to go have a corporate offsite if you've got like 20 to 30 employees. Right. Really, the customer's first touch point with Journey will probably be on a leisure stay. Now, when it comes to activating these customers, one of sort of like the unfair advantages that we have is we plug into all of our partners' PMSs. So we're able to basically like immediately have access to their past guests. And then what Journey does as part of being an alliance partner, what we do for our partners, we say, hey, Patrick, let's issue points to your past guests and just say, hey, if you sign up for Journey, you earn 1,000 points that you can redeem at a co-host stay or at a stay at any other stay that's part of the Journey Alliance, right? And so we're trying to give you an excuse to activate past guests, to get your historical guests excited about coming back to you, and or to have them just excited about feeling like they're special and they're getting something additional beyond the wonderful experience that you delivered them when they came to Joshua Tree last year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Curious then, obviously, with loyalty, right? What is your take, and just segueing a little bit, what's your take on loyalty in the short-term rental space? What things can we potentially do better as short-term rental hosts? Maybe not even from the points perspective, but from all perspectives of loyalty and getting repeat customers. Like, what's your experience there?
Yeah, I think one of the things to think about is like, why has this not worked before, right? And I mentioned the failure to build a strong consumer-facing brand. But when it comes to loyalty, a couple things have to be true. One, you have to have a lot of supply, right? Why do you not see lots of loyalty programs in the independent hotel space, for instance? Or like, why do you not see them in the short-term rental space? It quite frankly just comes down to there's not enough supply. So the reason why Bonvoy works is because Marriott has 10,000 hotels, right? The reason why Hilton works is they have 7,500 hotels. And so they have enough supply, and there's enough demand for those hotels in the markets that they're in. They have enough geodiversity where loyalty actually makes sense. It's very hard, right? If you're an operator, and I'm just going to pick on you, Patrick, right? Co-host company, you guys are predominantly in Joshua Tree. You've got like, what, 30 some odd units under management? Is that right, Patrick?
100.
Oh, 100. Jeez, excuse me. Okay, so 100, right? But okay, so you've got 100 units that you guys manage, which is great, and that's a very respectable number. It's larger than a lot of other operators in the space, right? There are definitely folks that have larger portfolios as well, but that's a very respectable portfolio. I would say it'd be very difficult to launch a meaningful co-host loyalty program. You could do it, right? And people should do it. People should find some ways to reward their guests for coming back and staying with them. But loyalty really needs scale to work in a meaningful way, because even if I come to one of your properties and I have the best experience of my freaking life and I tell all my friends about, hey, dude, when you guys go to Joshua Tree, you got to go stay with the co-host company. Like, you got to go check out their portfolio. Like, it's freaking epic. Even if all of that is true, I might just never come to Joshua Tree again for whatever reason, right? And so it's very difficult for you to justify the investment in building a rewards loyalty program that is meaningful when you're concentrated in one geo, even if you have density in that geo. A big reason why this hasn't worked historically is just that we haven't seen loads of nationally recognized consumer-facing vacation rental brands emerge. Maybe Vacasa was like the largest that consumers might know, but they've got a lot to figure out right now, obviously. So I think that's why it hasn't worked. Now, I believe short-term rentals, right, vacation rentals, you should constantly be thinking about what is your retention strategy for your guests, right? And some folks do a great job at this. Like, they have in-property promos and say, hey, if you book direct next time you come, you get 20% off. We had this, I was talking to somebody who was doing something really creative. They were saying like, hey, if you book your stay for next year or anytime in the next 6 months, in the next 24 hours after checkout, we'll give you 40% off that stay or something like that, right? So like, how do you basically get somebody very quickly after they've just had this wonderful experience with you to like immediately book a stay, and how do you make it worth their time and their early commitment? And so I think there are creative things that you can do there, and we could talk all day about guest retention strategies, but I think with loyalty in particular, you have to have good geo diversity. You have to have just good supply overall. It's very difficult to do this well without it. And then I guess maybe the third thing is you have to have other ways of earning value, that the consumer can earn value outside of actually night stayed at the property. So whether that's a credit card, whether that's other things that consumers can do in order to earn more points more quickly, in order to earn status more quickly, those sort of levers you have to have in place. Otherwise, it takes forever to earn anything meaningful and consumers will leave.
So let's challenge that thought, right? I'm challenging these thoughts not out of I
It's
don't
great.
agree with you, but I want to have a good conversation. A lot of restaurants also have loyalty programs in some sense, right? Even back in the day with stamping the cards, right? And you always lose those damn things. But you're like trying to stamp the 10.
You always lose
10. It. Yeah. But you're trying to stamp the 10 and then you get the one free or whatever. There's also a lot of that in restaurants, but also the short-term rental industry too. Like the direct booking initiatives are happening with, hey, book your stay next time with us, Stay 5, for example. I'm trying to build loyalty with, hey, next time you come, here's a 10% off. What do you think about those experiences? Do you think those rival what Journey's trying to do, or do you think those are supplemental? I'm curious what you think.
I think what you're describing are like discounts and perks or something like that, right? Which I don't necessarily think is what loyalty in its sum is. One of the things, it's funny, anytime we start talking about loyalty, the first thing that everyone starts talking about is discounts. But like your best customers should actually want to be spending more with you, not less, right? So I think a great example of this is look at what Jeff Bezos did with Prime, right? You're buying a membership. You're paying for a membership to get quote unquote free shipping, right? But when you actually do the math, like you're paying $10 a month to spend money with Amazon. Like the consumer is actually like you are paying $10 a month. If you don't spend any money with Amazon in a month, but you're a Prime member, they've just made $10 on you for literally nothing. Literally nothing. It's like, so how crazy is that you're spending money to spend more money with Amazon? And I think what they get right is that they understand that, oh, no, if consumers are actually loyal to your product, if you've built a great product, right, consumers want to spend more with you. And so then there are obviously other ways to reward Prime members, and they've built out, I think, the most impressive loyalty program in the world. I think their loyalty program rivals all of the airlines, all of the hotels, and then some. The fact that you get Prime free.
What about Costco?
I think it rivals Costco's. Costco's is so cheap, I know. But the thing is, Costco is also, it's located, it's geo-specific. My Costco membership also doesn't give me free Prime Video, which is obviously a competitor to Netflix, right? Maybe Costco memberships give Netflix memberships now, but I don't think they do. Maybe the Costco is a close second. I love it. But point being, right, like we immediately think about discounting. So as an operator, right, you run a short-term rental management company, Patrick, like you understand like margins are thin, right? Like it's difficult. You're splitting. Owners don't want to spend more typically. Your best owners do, and your best owners get that, but not every owner wants to spend more. Their margins are tight, especially these days. So what if there are other incentives and other ways to get consumers excited about your offering that don't involve you dropping your nightly rates? So a way to do that is if you can incentivize consumers with points and perks, right? You actually don't have to discount. You keep your nightly rate where it is, right? And you offer them other incentives that are economically inspiring that they can redeem or use at a later point, so you retain more margin. So that's one example, right, in the discounting vein. And I think like what Arthur and the team are doing at SafeFi is awesome. I think that at the end of the day is just like lead gen. They're just capturing additional guest data that are staying at the property. And again, that's great. That's awesome. That's super important. They've got some marketing collateral, the tools that they built out as well. But at the end of the day, that's more of it's just more of a guest data acquisition tool than it is like any sort of like loyalty play. I don't know. That's my perspective.
That's very interesting. I never heard it broken down like that. So that was a good breakdown. One thought that came to mind is as you're building this ecosystem, what about control? I think with Marriott, there's a lot of quality control or supply control, right? These are franchises. They have strict guidelines that they have to follow. There's things like that. With Journey, how do you guys make sure that, one, you guys flow traffic to other people, to other management companies? So like, why would I partner with Journey? Is Journey going to send me enough? And two, how do I know that the people that you're sending me didn't just have a really bad experience at another Journey partner or not, right? So I'm curious like how you deal with those two.
First and foremost, so Journey is highly curated. So we turn down, there's loads of people that have already, I mean, we're not even live to the consumer yet. We had a couple cool press features. So we get a lot of inbound folks applying to join the alliance. We turn down a lot of them because they're not great fits. So what is a good fit for Journey? We're curating a collection of independent properties that have soul. And soul is this like ambiguous sort of descriptor, right? And it's actually intentionally ambiguous. Most of our supply is very luxury, right? But we don't want to be exclusive to ultra luxury. We've got Nihi hotels, for example, one of our alliance partners. They're a top 10 hotel in the world, right? $3,000 a night to stay in their cheapest room, right? Not every consumer is going to fly to Indonesia and go stay. Sumba, it's on the island of Sumba, which is like an hour east of Bali. It's like in the middle of nowhere. It's very hard to get to Nihi, right? But people go there and they spend $3,000 a night there. But we don't want to be a product that's only for the ultra luxury traveler. We're building a product for what we call the new luxury traveler, right? So we believe the new luxury traveler, they seek adventurous escapes. They seek stays that are immersed in nature. They're more likely to go find and book a place that they first found on Instagram than a place that was written up in Condé Nast or Travel and Leisure. They care less about 5 stars, right? Because someone somewhere said that this hotel was 5 stars, and they care much more about, hey, what does the experience of this hotel look like on Instagram, right? Are my friends talking about it? Did this influencer that I follow and have followed for 3 years, have they stayed there? What did they think about it? Like, those are the inputs that these consumers are thinking about before they book a stay. So Journey's building a collection of those independent properties that match that criteria. So we use Soul because there's got to be something interesting about your property. You're never going to find like a single family suburban home in rural America with 4 beds and 3 baths. Like that there's nothing wrong with that sort of asset class, obviously, but you just won't find that on Journey. Right? Instead, you'll find spyglasses like Ben has at Onera, right? You'll find mirror cabins, right? You'll find Nihi resorts. You'll find the Annex Hotel, which is this incredible tech-enabled hotel in Toronto, like an incredible property. Very small, like bespoke hotel, but just absolutely insane experience, right? So those are the sorts of spaces that you'll find on Journey. So what we believe is the consumers that are seeking out those sorts of experiences are also interested, when they do go to Joshua Tree, in the kind of inventory that the co-host company would have, for instance, right? So that's the bet that we're making, is if you're willing to spend $900 to stay at one of Ben's tree houses, you're probably a high valuable traveled individual. That is, and then before that you stayed at the Annex, and then before that you stayed at, we just onboarded this incredible hotel in Lexington called the Manchester. It just won all these design awards. If you've stayed at those 3 properties and you've got great reviews, right, from the operators of those properties, and you left great reviews, chances are you're probably qualified to stay at a co-host company, right? So that's the intel that we're building. And then I think the other thing that you mentioned, Patrick, that I want to hit on that I think is super important is today, right, these big brands, right, they have all these standards, which is great and like super important. That's why people trust them. People trust standards. They trust brands that stand for things, right? One of the big problems, though, is that data sharing at some of these bespoke boutique properties is very hard, right? So you could build an incredible landscape resort, an incredible collection of beautiful design, high-end vacation rentals. But then when that guest goes and they go to Toronto, which, by the way, you're not in Toronto. Maybe the co-host company never wants to go to Toronto for whatever reason, right? You just have no interest in Toronto, but you have a guest that's now going and staying at Ryan's hotel called the Annex. What if there was an ecosystem where you could share that intel with him, right? Because you're a part of this alliance. So it's, hey, Zach really likes old fashions. Instead of giving him a glass of champagne at check-in, give him an old fashioned if your bar staff can make that happen or something like that, right? So what we're also building is this ability for folks who are part of our alliance. Now, people don't have to do this. We really respect people's like data, obviously. But if it's a Journey member who's just stayed at one of your properties, now I'm going to go stay at the Annex Hotel in Toronto, we can pass along that information that we know about the consumer directly to the hotel in a way that historically has never been possible. So the thing about being independent is you're not a part of something bigger. So you don't have access to, you don't know who these guests are. Now you can do some research, right? But most of it's manual. So if we can bring together a collection of the world's best guests and introduce them to the world's best hosts, I think that's where the magic can happen.
That's very interesting. I like the idea of sharing information across the board. I think that is actually, I believe that in my definition, that is a key component of a loyalty too, is the understanding of the guests that are coming through, because then you can curate an experience for those guests that are tailored to those guests. I think that's a huge thing, and I think we don't really have that data. One experience for myself that I remember to this day, which is crazy, is in Chicago. My friend growing up, I grew up middle class, but my friend his dad had a golf membership, like a golf course membership. It was like a really famous golf course. Like his locker was literally 2 down from Michael Jordan's, so it's like a really big one.
Wow.
And I remember seeing the locker. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Like the Michael Jordan? Yeah.
Yeah, like the Michael Jordan. And it was funny, like I opened I like saw that it was open. His shoes were there, just like sitting there. I was like, dang, that's cool. Big shoes, by the way. Anyways, the thing I remember really clearly is the moment he walked in. He doesn't walk into, obviously he doesn't go all the time, and people don't really know him, but for some reason they knew him. Like they just knew him. They're like, oh, hey, how's it going, Nate? And then they
Mm-hmm.
got like my name, Patrick. They just said Patrick. I'm like, how the hell do you know who I am? Like, I don't have a name tag or anything like that. It's like their whole process was just super tailored to the people. And it
Yeah.
threw me off board because like they came in and they knew what kind of like all my stuff, like all like what kind of golf clubs I and want to use or
Yeah.
all that stuff they knew just right away. Same with Nate. And I was like, how are they understanding this? And that experience just blew my mind because it's
Yeah.
just so small, but it was just so unexpected and
Yeah.
so tailored, and it made me feel like a VIP.
Exactly. And that's what the future of travel is, right? And what's crazy is that all of this data exists. Like, it's not like hard to find. It's just that people haven't been able to aggregate it in a way that makes sense, and they haven't been able to connect it around a collection of like-minded properties. The big hotel chains do it, right? But the big hotel chains own the brand. There hasn't been an ecosystem that's been built that actually enables people to retain the independence of their brand, but give them access to those very mechanics that the top operators, the top hotel brands in the world have.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think, obviously we're gearing in that position. What do you think the future of travel looks like, and how does that relate to like loyalty and understanding that aspect?
I think what you were just hitting on with personalization, like it's such an overused word, but like people talk about personalization and like I have had very few truly personalized experiences. I think what you just described, right, with your buddy and the golf club, like the country club where you guys were going golfing, like that experience sticks out to you because it was few and far between. And I had one experience. I've had one like experience that was like akin to that I talked about on my podcast. This incredible restaurant that I went to where they knew everything about us, and it was an insane experience. And they took our coats. There was no like coat check tag. Like they took my car keys. Didn't even know where my car went. Didn't even know where my keys were. Like, and they just had everything taken care of. And it was just such a magical experience, and it stands out. But it stands out again because it's rare. So I think the future of travel is like those experiences should be a lot less rare. You should feel that way. If you're spending money with a brand and you've enabled that brand to know some information about you, that brand should, and guess what? That some information is like booking. If I book a stay with you, I'm sharing pretty intimate details about who I am, where I'm going, why I'm going, what I'm spending. Brands should be able to leverage that to truly personalize my experience. So I think, let me give you this image, right? I don't think we're that far off from this. Your plane lands at the airport, you get off the plane, you walk to baggage claim, right? You wait for your bag. There's always that moment where you're like, should I call the Uber now? Is my bag close? Is it not close? I don't want to be waiting for freaking 17 minutes for the Uber. But then inevitably when you do call the Uber, they're like waiting for you and they're yelling at you and your bag's not there yet, right? And you're like, oh gosh, can you wait 5 minutes? I'll tip you extra. We've all been there. You know, we shouldn't be there because what should happen is your AirTag that's in your suitcase should be able to be shared with your Uber app so that your Uber, you can call an Uber ride the minute your bag tag is actually off the plane, set onto the belt. It comes out on the belt. Your car pulls up for you right outside door 7. You walk outside of door 7. You get into the Uber. It's playing your favorite Spotify playlist already, and or it's queued up your favorite podcast because it knows that about you. It drives you to your hotel. The front doorman,
It's
the bell.
autonomous too.
It's all autonomous. It's exactly. Yeah, there's no actual driver in there.
Driver.
So like you don't have to worry about driver's calls. You don't have to worry about the driver forgetting to press play. All of it is synced up. You arrive at the hotel. The bellman opens the door for you. They greet you by name. Thank you, Mr. Switek, for coming to our establishment. You walk in. They take your bag. There's no check-in. You don't need to go into check-in, but there is a front desk concierge person that when you walk up, they've got your favorite drink or snack ready for you. You take it, you thank them, they greet you, they ask if there's anything that they can do for you during your time here. They say, hey, I noticed that you're checking out pretty early. Can we schedule a ride for you so that you don't have to worry about scheduling an Uber right when you wake up and or whatever, right? That sort of experience, and that's just like, that is the tip of the freaking iceberg, right? But that experience, we are not far off from at all. In fact, I think we're maybe a couple years off from all of that happening. The autonomous driver, maybe 5 years off, but like at scale, right?
Yeah.
Like Waymo, like this could all be piloted with Waymo in San Francisco right now, right? And so I think that the future of travel, it reduces all the friction that people hate about travel. People hate waiting, right? They hate unpredictability. People love predictability. They love getting to where they need to go as quickly as possible. People generally hate airports. They generally hate lines. With technology, we're able to reduce all of that friction to a bare minimum to the point where we can swap out that time spent waiting for more magical experiences that can be delivered from the hotel or the operator of the short-term rental company. So I think that's where travel is going very soon.
Yeah, and then obviously you show up to your room and or Airbnb, and then it's fully stocked fridge. You don't have to
Yep.
go out and get groceries, and they know exactly what your groceries are.
Yep.
Now this kind of raises like privacy concerns, don't you think?
Here's what people like. People always say that, right? And then you think, okay, what about all the data that I give Uber and all the data that I give Instagram and all the data that I give all the apps that I use and love? You don't mind giving data as long as it's something as long as it returns something valuable, right? People get freaked out about data all the time, but hey, anytime you use an Uber app or a Lyft app, right, you are enabling location services on your device at that particular moment while you wait for your car ride, right? So like the level up of saying, okay, like I haven't opened the Uber app yet, but I'm in the airport and my AirTag from my bag is like that connection is a micro step, right? If you're already comfortable with turning on location services to call the freaking car, you're going to be comfortable very quickly or soon to be able to share your AirTag location with the Uber app so that it can call the car for you. Like that, there's no reason you wouldn't. And then beyond that, like the personalization of walking into the hotel room and like seeing all your food or whatever. Again, that's just gonna be like expected, right? In the same way when you visit a website, right, and you go to fill out a form on that website, it's really annoying when you've gone several times and it doesn't remember your data, right? Or think about like, trying to pay your credit card bill via your Capital One or Amex app. If you had to re-log in and you couldn't use Face ID to log in every single time, you would be freaking annoyed. Right?
Yeah.
The reason we all use Face ID is because it reduces friction. So at the end of the day, as long as there's enough value to the consumer and there's enough trust in the brand, trust in brand has to be there. But I would argue that it's actually pretty easy to build trust in brand as long as the value prop and the experience is delightful.
Overrides that. Yeah. I think you have to have a 10x product or a 10x experience to override the negative of, like, for example, sharing data. But yeah, but don't you want to have this experience? And this is like a 10x more better alternative to the small little sacrifice you have to make.
Well, also, if you're finding the right, this is where I think your supply really matters. If you're curating the right properties, right? If you're curating high-end luxury, soulful properties, and if folks are going to be spending like $1,000 per night or even $500 per night, that price as a heuristic is an important one, right? Meaning like there are a lot of assumptions that you can make about a brand. If you know what their social media looks like, if you know what their website looks like, if you know what you're spending per night, all of that like pretty quickly builds trust with the consumer. I think quite frankly a lot faster than you might think, which is why you're seeing so many consumers book direct. The reason people booked through Airbnb for so long was because direct booking websites were horrible. They were scary. Like the checkout experience was disgusting. Like those have come a long way. I still think that there's a long way that they need to go, but like booking through Airbnb was because of trust. But I think today social and good website design and good other elements of internet cred enable the consumer to establish trust with you more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's interesting is our market is actually really difficult to get direct bookings. Not difficult, but there's less of it. There's a lot more people that book on Airbnb. And what I've realized is because people don't really trust direct booking as much, even if you have a really nice website. Like they just like the trust of the $2 million liability and Airbnb being a third party and having their back. And so it's just really interesting, but I agree. I definitely think that's the direction things are going into.
Well, and your consumer, quite frankly, most people I would imagine are coming from the LA area. They're probably less price sensitive. For them, giving them a 10% discount or 15% discount if they book direct probably doesn't as much because they're going to be spending thousands of dollars on the stay anyways. That it's like, I might as well have the trust of Airbnb. Now, I think that like our job in the industry is to help communicate. No, this is a better experience, and that's one of the things that we seek to do at Journey is like, how do we help enable operators to deliver 10x experiences to guests so that there is more trust built in their direct booking ecosystems? But that'll come with time. But that's probably why, like in your market in particular, you're seeing lower numbers because you obviously have a great product.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, imagine this. Imagine for me too, like I'm like, I'll just book Airbnb. It's a little easier. Sometimes I'll do a lot of direct bookings, to be honest. But if you told me, hey, if you do a direct booking, we get a little bit of your information and then we can like tailor your experience, I'd be like, fuck yeah. Like have my data. Like, and then I show up and there's like flowers there for my girlfriend and like we're doing like a Valentine's Day thing. Like that'd be awesome. Like, you know, so it's like understanding that. Like, I always get really excited when I see, ooh, what's this dinner reservation for? I'm like, a birthday. Are they going to do something with that information? And most times they don't. But it's cool to have that, to have something really cool being done. Surprise.
And on that note, I think that's why it's funny you brought up restaurant reservations. I've stopped using like Open Table and like Resi. If I see availability, I use them as to see if it's available. And then I call the restaurant directly. Because it's the same sort of thing. You end up getting a better experience if you call direct, and like they end up putting you at a better table. And I don't know enough about the incentive structures around Open Table and Resi to know if the restaurant is making more money or less. And I actually don't even understand their business model. I've never looked into it. But the experience I get is always better if I like look at those tools to see availability, but then I call the restaurant in and book a reservation directly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's where even like the Amex, that would be actually really cool to see if Journey could get plugged in with Amex concierge services where they like book hotels for you, they book airlines, and they do dinner reservations. They get into dinner reservations where I can't even get into dinner reservations. It's so cool.
Yeah, dude, we're going to have our own, and we've got a cool partnership that I can't say anything about just yet. Journey is going to be more than just amazing hotels and incredible vacation rentals. We want to be your experiential. We want to be like the loyalty program that you use for experiences. Experiences are far greater than just places to stay. They're also places to eat, right? And places to fly. And anyways, more on that soon. But yeah, 100% agree that you're thinking about all of this in the right way.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. So, Zach, what are some tips maybe you can give to the audience maybe that are listening? They have a short-term rental right now, and obviously like building loyalty is a big part of things. But do you have any tips and tricks for how people can retain guests and get them to continue coming back to their short-term rentals? Or any maybe you can tell me like some interesting data that you found with Journey that you want to share, like something that you didn't know prior to working with Journey, but after seeing, oh wow, interesting, like this one little behavioral thing happens when somebody does this or whatever.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that again because the product isn't live yet, so we don't have tons of like consumer data yet. We could talk in 6 months and that'll be really different. But actually, the idea that I was going to give that has nothing to do with the Journey, but is something that I'd love to see more people execute on in the space. I've talked about this on my podcast so many times, right? It's this whole idea of like building an alliance, building like a network of places. I think that there's huge opportunity in this space to like partner with other great operators in like your geo. So I think this would need to be like 60 to maybe 90 miles from your spot. Find a collection of similar stay types. So maybe this is a luxury home. Maybe this is like an A-frame or something like that. Go in together, build a collective, and go buy like A-frames in California.com or something like that. And then collaboratively go in on the cost to build a solid direct booking ecosystem, a beautiful website, right? Because the problem with direct booking ecosystems that not enough people talk about is that they're incredibly expensive. Like standing up a true, strong direct booking program is very expensive. And I hate all the STR gurus that like make it sound like it's a no-brainer. You just have to do it. Have you done the math, man? It's not actually a great solution for most people. You can quote me on saying that. I don't think it's a great solution for most.
I agree with you. I do agree with you.
Good. And you know better than me. But anyway, sorry, I'll just finish the idea real fast. So if you found partners that had a similar, I think this really works at a similar product type. So if you go find the best 50 A-frames in California, you build A-frames in California.com. Everyone chips in a couple $100 or whatever, like maybe a couple thousand. You build this beautiful website. In terms of SEO value, you'll rank very quickly for those keywords for consumers that are looking for that kind of product, and then you can share the costs of that direct guess across the ecosystem. So it's like a step in the loyalty direction without needing to be partnered with a formal loyalty program, and also something that can be built much more organically. And then you, as part of that operator, could have some sort, or part of that alliance, could have some sort of agreement where you share some of those guest insights with the whole collective. So like when Patrick goes and books this A-frame, one day I share that insight, Patrick's insight.
He's a horrible guest. Do not book him. He broke my chair and didn't accept the claim.
Exactly.
Hey, sharing bad guest information is good too.
Just as important.
We have something like that. So,
anyways,
I cut you off.
No, it's more. I'm done. It's basically just like a more organic way of building a network of similar, like-minded properties, and I actually think that's like an under-tapped into resource and opportunity in the space.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. Have you seen that play out in real life, or is that just an idea?
No one's done it. And I keep telling people to do it. Honestly, it comes down to just organizing. And what's crazy is that all these influencers have these massive communities on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere, on LinkedIn now, and yet none of them have been able to actualize this. I just think it's a really, and I don't know if people just don't have the tech chops. It's not a hard tech build. It's really not. Like, you just have to get people that are excited about it. And I actually think you start with more boutique operators who care about luxury, that care about consistency, that care about unique product, and you build it with them. And then you just have to agree, like, it's an alliance. So, like, sometimes you're going to win and sometimes your partners are going to win, but that's okay. So, I don't know. I think it's worth executing on. And I would spend way more money there than I would spend building, like, my own direct booking ecosystem if I'm sub 50 units.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Super interesting, Zach. I do want to get into the last 3 questions here and close this off. It's been incredible so far, but I have one special question for you.
Oh, no.
So so the first thing is book that really inspired you. It could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be an educational resource you had that really helped change your life, and it could be anything.
I feel like everyone probably says 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, but that definitely had a pivotal experience. I think more recently, like the My First Million podcast has been hugely influential in my like more recent entrepreneurial years. If you are interested in just 2 tech guys talking about how to build, how to brainstorm business ideas, it's absolutely worth a listen.
That's awesome. And special question for you. Let's say that Journey's not around, okay? So that loyalty program's not here. What loyalty program do you subscribe to the most out of all of the ones in the hospitality industry? I'm curious if there's one that stands out to you the most and you think they do a really good job.
So I'm gonna go with United. I'm a sucker for status on airlines. And it's funny, I was talking to a team member who leads our product at Journey and talking about how one of the hard things about like loyalty and like the hotel space or the vacation rental space is like upgrades is really challenging, especially like in vacation rentals. So I go and book a beautiful stay at your property. If there's no upgrading to another property isn't typically possible or easy to do, and it's very subjective. Whereas when you're on a plane, there's clearly an economy class and there's a first class, right? Like, and so like that differentiation and that upgrade is a dynamic that the airlines get to play with that like the hotels and vacation rentals don't. So, and the reason I think I've been so loyal I was very loyal to American for many years, and I used to travel a lot for work, even before I now also travel a lot for work, but I was very loyal to American pre-COVID, actually. American did not innovate once during my experience. And like today, their app is exactly the same. The consumer experience is horrible.
You lose your points right away.
Yeah, you lose your points.
I hate that.
Your status is like, it's so hard. It's like meaningless. Whereas to contrast that, since I've been loyal to United over the past, like since COVID, it's like the past 4 years, every single freaking quarter they're innovating and they're growing and they're bringing on new partnerships. Their app is getting better. The in-flight experience is expanding. The interiors of the planes are getting better. It's so noticeable as a consumer seeing how they are continually investing in their product and in my experience. And therefore, I'm continuing I took 2 extra flights last year just to maintain my status because I was going to lose it, right? But I was motivated to do that because they've just built such a successful brand. So right now, United is sitting at the top of my list.
Why not Delta? A lot of people don't.
Everyone likes Delta. To be super fair, I just live near a United hub. I live in Washington, D.C., right outside D.C. Dulles is one of their hubs. And I've never lived in or near a Delta hub, so it's just the supply hasn't been there. I've definitely flown Delta, but I haven't flown enough to give it like a fair assessment. But I also just hate the fact that everyone's all like the like young millennial business travelers and Gen Z business travelers are all like, yeah, Delta. And I'm like, no, freaking guys, United has way more supply. They've got way more routes. They just put an order in for another 1,000 planes. Elon trusted them with Starlink before anyone else. They're just innovating at a pace that I think is impressive, but I'm sure Delta's great too.
What about upgrades? You get upgrades a lot? You get upgraded?
A lot? No. I do get upgrades much more than I ever did, but no. I guess I've had 2 upgrades this year so far, and we're in January. Yeah, so yeah, decent. But it all just depends on the route. I'm not that important. I have a gold status right now. I get to board with Group 1, which is nice, but there's a lot of people with better status than me.
That's awesome. Thank you. And we alluded to this about Journey and the future of all of that, but I wanted to know what the future for Zach looks like.
Oh my gosh. The future of Zach and the future of Journey hopefully look pretty in tandem with one another. Yeah, no, I'm very excited to really build the product over the next several years. There's nothing I'm more excited about. And then beyond that, yeah, just growing the podcast. Like my show, I have a show called Behind the Stays. Our format's like a little bit different than this show, but if any of you guys are looking for cool stories of hospitality innovators and you just want somebody else who likes to get excited about things, besides Patrick, if you want to listen to another dude that's also excited, you could check out my podcast at just behindthestage.com.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and you guys should definitely check it out. I was just on it recently. 100% recommend. Cool. Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing the knowledge. I love what you guys are doing at Journey. As always, you're a massive connector. And I think multiple people at the party had mentioned that. I'm just happy I met you in person, and I'm sure we're going to continue to see each other at all these events. Yeah, man, just let's keep it going. But without further ado, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, man. Keep up the energy. It's totally infectious.
Appreciate you, man.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Patrick Real Estate Show. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a follow and leave us a 5-star review. Your support truly means a lot. And connect with Patrick in the show notes below. Until next time.